Bryan Fischer here for D1 Ticker, and we have a tremendous conversation here for you today with an all-star cast who really understands what it is like to operate at a championship level. Excited to dive into the role of technology like Catapult with as it pertains to collegiate ice hockey. Like I said, we have a tremendous cast here. Ben Bransfield, the Riverhawks video coordinator there at UMass Lowell of men's ice hockey and the founder of Hockey Insight. Matt Murray, the head sports performance coach there at UMass Lowell, and Patrick Love, an applied sports scientist at Catapult. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be here, Brian.
All right. Well, like I said, we're gonna have a tremendous conversation here, and it's about a very interesting subject for everybody here. But Matt, I'll go ahead and kind of start with you.
Sure.
How long have you guys been using technology, in your field, and how have you kind of seen technology evolve over the course of your career?
So I think I was fortunate enough to have a couple of good internships before I got a full-time job at the University of Maine. And that's really where I was first exposed to technology. We were just kind of tracking vertical jumps, body weight, body fat, real basic things, but it gave us a little bit more of an insight as to what was going on with these athletes. And I think over time, as technology just improved and companies started to see that there was a need for it in our setting, I think we started to get into more, why are we seeing certain things happen? And once we started asking more questions, that usually led us into some more heart rate data, to some more performance data in the gym, whether it be a vertical jump, a bike test, a VO2 test, whatever it may be. And then it eventually evolved to the point where we are today, where we're tracking pretty much anything and everything. As soon as our athletes come in, we're tracking body weights, we're tracking heights, we're tracking body fats, power metrics in the weight room. And then I think the thing that's really evolved for us here the last couple of years is the on-ice stuff that we're tracking using Catapult.
And Ben, I'll open that same question up to you. I mean, I would imagine, gone are the days where you almost had the giant film session with everybody involved. I would imagine technology, especially in the video space, has evolved quite a bit over the last couple of years.
It has, and especially on, as it pertains to my job as a video coordinator. When I first started using Catapult products, it was actually Exos. And I remember burning discs of games and having to run it down a hallway to the opposing team to make sure I get it to their coaches before they left. And that was always fun, trying to give a film to a coach that just lost a game who wants to get out of there as quickly as possible. And now you can do it with a click of a button. You can share it with the entire league. You can share it with players. You can share it with NHL organizations and skills coaches. Technology has just come so far, especially in the last decade. And it's been really exciting to be able to use some of these cutting edge products.
Well, unfortunately, Ben, it's even going back to a ways to when you almost had to do it videotape to videotape. And I think the advancements are certainly, from a time-saving standpoint, very apparent for you and in your daily job. Patrick, I do want to kind of follow up for you with Catapult, and you work with a ton of clients. Can you give us a sense maybe of how this technology is really used, and how is it worn? How are they using it in training, and, getting some of the insights that you guys can give them?
Yeah, so we have at this point, we're up to 21 NHL teams. We have about 13 American League teams, and we're at like 16 NCAA teams and a few international teams as well. Kind of the three big buckets that we hit on is optimizing performance, mitigating injury risk, and return to play. And the teams that use it, they all fill those three buckets in different ways. Where I kind of see it best utilized, the wearable side, is actually on return to play. There's been some growth in players wanting to see their data, but anytime that a player gets injured, they're always very hungry to see what their training session's like and see what it looks like compared to a game. So in my opinion, that's where I think we're best utilized.
Matt, I'll follow up on that injury risk in particular. I mean, how are you guys at a local level with your school and your program, using this technology to help prevent injuries?
So I think it's more, I was fortunate enough to use it with two different coaches and two different staffs, and kind of seeing how I used it in the first staff. It was more, we were trying to educate our players and our coaches in terms of what optimizing a practice looked like, or we were trying to educate and help our athletic trainer figure out what a return to play looked like. And then fortunately, when it came to Lowell, that system was already in place. So I think for the way I kind of used it a little bit here at Lowell was more just to kind of give insight in terms of what the coaches were already seeing, and what the athletic trainers were already seeing. So it was very easy for me to look at this data and look at this information that we were collecting on our players, and make a really informed decision based off what we knew what was happening, whether it be a practice the next day, a game the next day, or whatever it may be. And in terms of what Pat was saying, I mean, that's exactly how we do it for return to play. We have data based on games and practices and workouts. An athlete gets injured, it's a very standardized process, not linear at all. There's some days where the athlete's feeling really good and we can push it a little bit. And there's other days where that athlete's just not feeling as good as he or she would have hoped. And then we just use that data just to back off. But it really allows us to speed up that process a little bit. And as most of you guys know, coaches aren't the most patient. They want to know an answer right away. But if it's helpful for myself and our staff and our athletic trainer, I'm not coming at it from a medical side. Our athletic trainer's not coming at it from a performance side. We're coming at it from both sides to go to the coach and saying, hey, listen, this is the injury. And this is the plan, whether it be in the gym, on the ice, or in the training room. And then we're going to be checking in with you daily to make sure that player is hitting those standards to be able to return to play.
Hey, Matt, just real quick, I want to jump in there and ask something as a follow-up. So before having Catapult, like the wearable side, and it being a non-linear process, what would you guys do previously if you push someone too far without having a number?
Oh, it would just be just sit down and rest. And I think, personally, I personally think that's probably one of the worst things for an athlete. Not from a physical side, but also a mental side as well. These kids, these athletes they want to be in the gym all the time, working on something, seeing their progress, and not having that information. We were kind of just guessing. And I think at this level, when you're dealing with such high level athletes, when every game means as much as it does, and especially in our league, Hockey East, where it's a battle every single night, and we can't afford to hope and guess when an athlete's going to return to play. There's always a little bit of not knowing. We don't, unless you're obviously getting some sort of imaging or scan. There's a little bit of guesswork there, but trying to make this an objective path as much as possible has really eased the burden on our athletic trainer and myself to make sure that when if we tell an athlete, hey, it's 2 to 4 weeks, or an athletic trainer tells an athlete it's 2 to 4 weeks, we lay out that plan day one and say, hey, listen, this is what week one should look like from an on-ice standpoint, from an acceleration standpoint, from a workload standpoint, even going down from an asymmetry standpoint. If we had an athlete that had a knee injury, we want to make sure that asymmetry is not so damaging that it's going to end up causing more problems than it is worth. But it really allows us to just create that plan and use the data to fall back on that plan. Hey, did we hit our number today? We were a little low. We were a little high. And in that case that you were talking about, Pat, if we were a little too high, we did too much. Hey, you're still going to do something that next day, but we have now, let's say it's going to be 40% of what that previous day was. And then we just live track that. We wait till that athlete hits that number or whatever metric we're looking for that day. Once they hit that number, we're done. We're off the ice. Get right back in the gym, start doing your rehab. So.
Matt, I'll follow that up just a little bit in terms of your conversations within the UMass Lowell program. What are you talking about with coaches, with administrators, with your players in terms of getting that buy-in on the use of this technology and how you kind of can take those insights and present them, say this is a program benefit?
So I think it's a great question, but I think I learned the hard way when I first started with Catapult. I had a lot of information, and I really thought that a coach was going to be very excited to see all that information. And I was a little bit younger at the time, a little bit less knowledgeable, less experienced. And I think it was really humbling for me to kind of present that information and feel very good about myself that, hey, listen, I collected this, I did this is what we're seeing. And our coach just kind of sat down and he goes, hey, that's great. What does it all mean? And it was one of those things where I had to really go back to the drawing board and say, hey, listen, this information is great, but if I can't get every member of our organization to understand it in their own respective way, the way I talk to an athletic trainer is very different than the way I talk to our goalie coach. And the way I talk to our goalie coach is very different than the way I talk to our head coach. So it's really understanding each staff member's roles and how they impact the day-to-day operation, whether it be practice planning, video planning, game lineup management, stuff like that. And then meeting them halfway. Because I've always found it's very difficult to kind of walk into a coach's office and really talk all science and the minutia and really getting into the weeds of it. And quite honestly, they just want to know what they need to know and how is this information going to help us prepare for that day. And I think just having everybody on the same language as the technology we're using in Catapult. When I go into our athletic trainer and I say skating load, he knows exactly what that means. And I think all the other staff members knows exactly what that means. And it makes my life very easy where I'm not trying to deal with, hey, one coach thinks it's this, another coach thinks it's this. We usually have a meeting at the start of the year and say, hey guys, these are the metrics we're looking at. ask for their input. Do they have any input in terms of what they want to see in terms of the metrics? But I think being on the same page from every department, whether, like I said, it's equipment manager to Benny, to myself, to our athletic trainer, I think that just makes the players' development a lot smoother.
I mean, Ben, I'll open that same question up for you. You deal with the coaching staff on a pretty regular basis. How much have they been able to buy into just not only from an ease of use, but how they can truly benefit from this as a program?
Well, I think now, I look at my job as a video coordinator. I just am one piece of the puzzle. And now that I can work very easily with the goalie coach, the position coaches, Matt, and even sometimes with the athletic trainer, when we have different pieces of video and data, we can combine those. When you're looking at injury, it's not just subjective data or objective data. Like, you're not just trying to pinpoint when somebody got injured from one angle or two angles. You can actually have some data back it up, make it easier for the athletic trainer to actually explain it to our coaching staff. And it just makes the process a lot easier. There's no guesswork. And as far as my job, the buy-in with Catapult is very easy. Almost every coach now has been an assistant coach at a lower level, where they have to be an assistant coach, a recruiter, and the video coach. And it's come so far, like I said, in the past 5 to 10 years, where everybody understands how much easier it's made their job. It's not hours upon hours upon hours of the minutia of tagging a game, pulling the clips out, using a third-party system like Dropbox or whatever to share files. You can do everything from the Catapult ecosystem. And it's just unbelievable how much that these guys buy in now. And even somebody like our head coach, who I wouldn't say is the most tech-savvy person, he's actually bought in, is comfortable with a laptop, and can navigate all the way around the program now. And that makes me proud.
Absolutely. And probably not alone on that front either. You're head coach there. Patrick, I'm kind of curious. You work with across a number of different programs. When it comes to best practices, what are you kind of conveying to a lot of your clients about how to use this and how you kind of have learned as the technology itself has evolved?
Yeah, I mean, biggest thing is when you're starting out, keep it simple. Like, you just do not want to overcomplicate this stuff. Matt was alluding to it, and when I was a client, when I was with the Edmonton Oilers and the Bakersfield Condors as the strength coach, I had the system, and I drank from the fire hydrant with data. Like, it just hit me in the face, and you're trying to figure out what's up, what's down. Biggest thing that I've seen with people that use this system successfully, though, is that they have their one or two key metrics they're paying attention to. They know how to explain them very clearly to like all the different key stakeholders in the department. And yeah, they really just kind of monitor one or two metrics throughout an entire year. Now there's people to get way more advanced than that. And we obviously help them get there. But biggest thing is just keeping it simple and knowing what you're talking about and communicating it very clearly. And one of the things that I think our system does very well is being able to say, like, all right, we have a player load of this practice was 150. That doesn't really give you any context, but if you are wearing it in game and you know that an average game is 300, well, now we can say that it's 50% of what an average game is. And then everybody in the building understands what that means. So.
And I mean, this is a technology that certainly has evolved over the last couple of years. I mean, you guys are Catapult itself has been synonymous with performance in sports like soccer and football, of course. But how have you guys been able to kind of tailor this specifically to men's ice hockey?
Yeah, so we've got a couple different things that our company does that other wearable technology companies don't do. We actually have a skating algorithm where we can tell the number of strides that a player takes, the force between their left and the right leg when they're skating. And then a recent development was goalie load. So we're actually able to see the number of times that a goalie goes down in their crease, and then number of times they're moving left and right, and able to get load metrics on their position-specific movements. That's been really, really eye-opening to see, and maybe Matt can kind of, peel back the curtain here a little bit and let you know how they've been using those goalie metrics and some of the stuff they've seen as well.
Yeah, I think it was fire hydrant for sure when we got the goalie metrics. I'll be honest, because in the past we were just using the same metrics that we were using for players. And quite honestly, I wasn't even really looking at that for goalies, just because I knew the demand of the position was just so vastly different than what forwards and defensemen were doing. So initially, I'd tend to look at their heart rates, But the style we play, we're a very defensive team, so our goalies aren't really given a lot of shots a game. When we were in Maine, we were a very offensive team, and we had a lot of shots a game, so the heart rates were a little different. But that was just pretty generic. But I think once I sat down with Pat at the start of last year, and he mentioned that we were going to start using goalie metrics, and it was something that I learned in the past where I didn't really necessarily want to show our coaches this until I fully understood the information. And honestly, to this day, I think I have a pretty good grasp on it, but it's one of those things that just the more we kind of experience it. But what we ended up finding out was, our structured practices were immensely more intense than that of a game. And it was something too that I kind of looked at, and I sat down with our goalie coach, and we kind of were like, does this make sense? But if you kind of think about it, I mean, it really does. In a practice, in a 30, even just like a 30-minute goalie skate, they're facing about double the shots that they would face, and sometimes even in a weekend. It's very controlled. It's very structured. They're working on very specific things, whether it be left to right, right to left. And especially if we have, goalies are a very hit dominant position. If we have goalies that we're starting to see a little bit of an asymmetry between the left side and the right side, that usually sits down with our athletic trainer and myself, and we usually design some sort of PT rehab program for it. But what we also found too, which is very interesting, is the profile or the style of athlete was so different between our three goalies. Our starter last year was a very athletic goalie. Liked to play at the top of his crease, was on his toes a lot. Would like to, very aggressive, and his loads were almost double that of our second and our third string, who were very athletic goalies, very strong. But they just played more of a, sat in the net, played their percentages, big goalies, took up a lot of space. And it was just very interesting for me to kind of see, they played the same position, but how they actually expressed that those demands were tremendously different. And then in turn, that really changed what I was doing with them in the weight room. If I saw that starting goalie was doing X amount of accelerations, or he was going down, 4 times more than the other goalie, very basic, but it didn't really make much sense for me to do more explosive stuff with him in the gym because he was already getting that stimulus on the ice, right? Versus our other two goalies who were, not a lot of stimulus on the ice, those kids I could push, from a speed, strength, explosive standpoint in the weight room. So it really enabled me to kind of figure out when to, especially as a starter goalie, you're playing 2 games, the load on those guys is a lot different than your backup goalie who's maybe facing, a 3-on-3 on Saturday morning with the guys that aren't playing. It doesn't seem like it's stressful, but watching that load and watching those numbers tick up, it was something that I eventually sat down with our goalie coach, and we ended up designing a plan for our goalies in the second half of the season to make sure that at the end of the day they were ready to go for Friday and Saturday.
I remain fascinated by the fact that we can get so granular with things like goalies in this realm. I mean, it seems like we've come such a long ways from just kind of relying on save percentage or something like that. And Matt, I would imagine as a former goalie yourself, being able to kind of convey what those numbers can mean to the kids themselves and have that practice to where they are looking at things, but they can also take it and use it in games has to be tremendously valuable.
I would generally say I'm probably closer to our goalies, just because I played the position, albeit not at a high level, but I understand the stress of it. I understand the physical stress of the position and the mental stress of it too. And I think a lot of our goalies, some of the, one of our goalies right now who's going to be a, second, third stringer this year, he hasn't had a game action yet. So anytime he gets in a scrimmage, we're looking at a game like heart rate. And so it's interesting to kind of say like, hey, in a way, this is good. And I'm trying to highlight that to that athlete. Like, hey, listen, I know you're not playing a game, but when and if, you do get called on, the training you're doing right now, the loads you're accruing right now are going to make you ready for that game. Versus having in the old days where, if I was starting, I was taking all the shots on Thursday. I was pretty much doing everything. And now we structure it out a little bit where we know if that goalie is very athletic who's playing on Thursday, hey, maybe only out there for 30 minutes because you're just going to jack up those numbers, right? And then it's not necessarily for this stuff. It's the starter as well, but it's more showing the second and third stringer that, hey, listen, like, we have to train you like you're playing a game, because when and if that starter goes down, we need to make sure that athlete can handle that load. Because if we're not pushing that athlete outside of the rink or the gym, and that athlete comes in and they're training at a load like this, and all of a sudden the game load is 3-4 times higher. We're not talking about performance. We're talking about injury risk at this point, right? They're just not ready to handle that physical stress on the body. And then obviously too, they're going to start giving up goals that they normally wouldn't give up. And I think just having that visualization or that ability to track that makes it a lot easier to have all 3 of them ready whenever they need to be.
I've been following that up. I mean, I would imagine that the technology itself, makes things a lot easier to kind of pull video and reinforce some of those coaching points so that you can get your second and third stringers, ready on a consistent basis, no matter who they face.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Myself, I'm not going to pretend like I'm a sports scientist or can understand the data at a super high level, but it's just fascinating to me to be able to listen to what Matt says and how he explains it to the other coaches, because it's unbelievable how much you can extrapolate from a few pieces of data. Whereas, like you said, back in the old days, you would have goals against and save percentage, and you'd have a few clips of practice and the film from the game, and that's all you had to talk about. But now you can go so much deeper into all the different metrics, and each staff is on their own with how they want to handle it, but it's just unbelievable how deep you can actually get if you decide to.
Matt, focusing not just on goalies, but I'm kind of curious how you collect the performance data that you're looking at through the Catapult system, and how it's impacting decisions that you're making with your coaching staff. How actionable is some of this data to where you can convey it both to your coaching staff and the student athletes themselves?
I think it depends on the kid. I'll start with student athletes first. I get some kids that are really, and a lot of it too is the generation of kids that we have right now. They've grown up with this technology. They've, good or bad. I mean, it's another argument, but they've been tracked, pretty much since they've been noticed, since they've been had a fast track to D1, whether it's a trainer tracking their heart rate, stuff in the gym, or more advanced if guys going to NHL camps and they're wearing catapults out there. So I think they're invested in it because it's been such a heavy part of their development over the last couple of years, that once they get, to a place like Lowell and we have information like that, they kind of want to see it. But I think too, what's something that I have to be careful of is how much we're showing that athlete, right? Because then you have a couple athletes that start to get paralyzed by that. Well, why did I have 2 times more force on my left leg than my right leg? And it's, N is one, and that's what I try to tell the athletes. Like, hey, one day is not make or break your performance or your entire existence, right? We look for trends, and that's the way I try to tell our athletes. Like, now if I'm seeing a week or two, something like that, yeah, let's have a conversation about it. But I generally use it for athletes. If something's going on, if I start to see a trend, that's not something I'm immediately going to our staff right away and saying, hey, this is what I'm seeing. I'll go up to the player and say, hey, how's everything going? And I won't even talk about the data. I'll just ask, hey, how you feeling? How's your leg? I'll try to kind of lead him to it without actually telling him that. And then he'll usually come and say, hey, like, yeah, my left hip felt a little weird on the ice today, or I didn't feel like I had some pop. And then that's an easy transition for me to bring up the data and say, hey, listen, this is what we're looking at. But from a coaching standpoint, it's something too that, I send a report to our staff after every practice, after every game. 8 times out of 10, they just look at it and they go, yep, that's pretty much what I thought I was going to see. And I don't really have any questions. But there's that one off, and hey, in that second period, we were a little tired at the end. And I don't try to fight that. I don't try to get combative with our coaching staff. They're obviously seeing something that I am not experienced enough to see on the ice. And then that's when I usually, in some of those situations, I'll sit down with Ben and I'll say, hey, listen, like, did we take a lot of penalties in the second period? Were they more, were we more shorthanded in the second period? And if the answer is yes, and then I can easily correlate, hey, listen, when we only have 4 guys on the ice, we burn X amount more energy, X amount more load. And then I usually, when I sell it to our coaching staff like that, it's usually like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it's not, it might not be a fitness thing. It might just be, hey, listen, like, we had 2 5-minute majors in the second period. We had 8 guys killing the penalty. That's pretty stressful on the guys, right? So for the coaching standpoint, I usually just give it to them, and I usually let them ask questions about it if they have anything they want to bring up. And then we usually just 5-10 minute conversation, and that usually kind of bleeds into what we're doing for the next day.
Patrick, you have sports scientist in your title, so and you've worked in the league, you've worked in a number of different situations. How are you kind of being able to kind of provide that resource to the schools as well, to bounce ideas, to kind of provide insights into the data that they're seeing, and how they can easily digest it?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things our company does a really good job with, actually, is hiring people that have industry knowledge. Even when I was working in the NHL, the AHL, even working in college for a little while at the University of Vermont, there was always somebody I could call with Catapult, and I could bounce ideas off of them. And it was people that actually knew what the grind was like. It's one thing when you hear like sports scientists and you hear like, oh, really, like, sounds like a sexy title. The reality is there's times where I had this happen in the NHL. Your Catapult case, literally the only plugin is in the bathroom. and you just have to make do. And that's just part of the grind. Like, you have to understand that that's just what these guys are going through. And if somebody calls me on a Saturday and it's 11 p.m., I know that's probably a pretty important phone call, and they got to do something to help their coach out. So I think it's being able to put things in context and understand where people are coming from is definitely an important part of my job.
I'll toss this to Ben first, and then Matt, you can follow up. But I'm curious. All this data, and we're in an age of player movement, especially at the college level, when guys can transfer in and out so regularly. Are you able to kind of use some of the videos, some of the data insights that you guys are getting to help kind of onboard players as they come into the program? Certainly with new recruits that you come in and kind of show them this is how things are going to happen here with the at UMass Lowell.
Well, guys coming in, we won't have a lot of data for them, but I think it helps us paint a clear picture of how we do things and how professionally we do things when they come in here. And they know what they're expecting, and it really is an amazing process from when they come in here and they go all the athletic forms and all their tests, and they do all of their testing with Matt, and we do our systems presentations, and we set a pretty high standard, I think, and Catapult actually plays a huge role in how we do everything here. And I think going forward, obviously, Matt was saying a lot of players I think they're hungry for feedback, even at a younger age right now. And I think it's really important for us to be able to give them a taste of that, even as they come right in their summer training. And we can kind of help them say, hey, we think this is where you're going to be. We're going to focus, your individual development plan on this and this. And it says a little more when you have actual data to back up your thesis on how they're going to perform and what they need to do to perform their best. So I think as we get more hands-on, it grows over the year, but it's nice to be able to give them a little bit right off the bat.
Matt, I'll follow that up just a little bit with you in particular. I mean, have you even seen kind of the detailed nature of your coaching staff saying, you mentioned the 3 goalies and having kind of all different styles. Are they kind of able to kind of synthesize a little bit some of that data and even adjust, how they're recruiting a certain position?
Recruiting standpoint, I think it's, I think we want blue collar guys. Like, we want hard workers. And in terms of getting a profile on an athlete and trying to look for it, I think a lot of the athletes that I have right now are very similar type profiles. We have some obviously very high skill guys who are a little bit different, but I mean, the general, if I had to sum it up, I would say the majority of our team is very high workload athletes, right? So from a recruiting standpoint, we actually use Catapult to recruit athletes. When I sit down with prospective students or recruits, it's a main point that our coaching staff wants me to hit. And I think that's a huge part too. And just kind of to go back what Pat was saying, having him in that NHL, and it just makes my life so easy, because now, not even from a recruiting standpoint, like if I have a question, like I said, at 10 o'clock on a Friday night, 99% of the time I'm getting that phone call answered. And just to have that security, like from being in the trenches and having coaches like staring at you going, where is this information? It's a little intimidating. But from a recruiting standpoint too, like when we bring recruits in, and especially parents, and even now we have agents coming with us, right? We're able to show this data and say, hey, listen, we're not only using this just for your development here. We have connections in the NHL, the AHL, professional leagues all over Europe, where we know how these athletes are performing from a purely physiological standpoint. And we can use that information. We can use those connections to help develop you here, to get you ready for that next level. And I think when parents see that, especially, your son or your daughter's coming to school, you want to know that they're taken care of, and we're not just guessing with their development, right? And especially if it's an agent, right? There's a lot of money. We're talking contracts now. We want to make sure we're developing them at the fastest rate possible, but doing it the safest way possible. And I think the way we use for recruiting is, like I said, is we just highlight everything we're talking about on this call right now. Is just how we use this information to help your kid develop. And I think too, Benny touched on it a little bit, having our kids here in the summer, it enabled me to develop a profile for each athlete. So when we start our first preseason practice, I have a pretty good idea of what I'm looking at. And I don't need to use the entire preseason to figure out what type of team we have or what type of athletes we have or how hard practices are, because I already have a month of data on it. And I'm loosely comparing it, because obviously summer training is a little bit different than preseason training. But it really helps me figure out what type of athletes we have before the season starts. And that's how I use that information to relay that to our staff and our players.
Patrick, is that kind of one of the biggest advantages that you have with the Catapult ecosystem, is that you are being able to use it kind of from the youth ranks all the way up to the NHL?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's not just on the wearable side, but on the video side too, right? Like, I think one of the coolest parts about this job is for me to be able to connect people at all different levels, whether that's in, somebody that's in Quebec working in college, or somebody that's in the NHL that works in British Columbia, wherever it may be, and people that are over in Sweden that use the product. To be able to just help people network and understand, I think it's a really, really good thing. Another service that we have on the video side is we actually have a yearly event in Boston. It's a video user conference where guys from the NHL, the AHL, the Coast, college, they all get together and talk about best practices on how to use our product on the video side. So I'm sure Ben could talk a little bit more in detail about the value that we provide with that conference.
No, honestly, that's one of my favorite events this summer. It's always towards the beginning of the start of the season, so it's a great way to kind of end summer and get everybody on the same page for starting the season. And when I was younger, obviously, I feel old. I just turned 30 yesterday. I've been using Catapult products for a decade now, and I would be completely lost without some of the advice and best practices, guides that Jim and Eddie and almost every big time user that I've met, guys in the NHL that I never thought would talk to me when I was a volunteer at UMass Lowell, have really helped me shape how I do things here now. And the networking aspect of it is just, you can't get that anywhere else. It's 3 days of guys getting together, guys and girls getting together and talking about how they use the product and how they can get the most out of the product. And even a guy like myself, who my staff is me and a student volunteer, I think we're able to run a pretty professional shop here. And as Matt said, it's a big piece of our recruiting. I've really built out the video room here, and when kids come through and see it and their parents, they go, "Wow!" But those guys run a professional shop, and they walk into the gym with Matt, and they see all of the data and everything he can generate with Catapult stuff there, and I think it's just huge. And I know not everybody can have the same expensive toys that every other team has. But it's good to talk to people from all different levels at that conference. And I'm able to take one piece from the NHL, one piece from Major Junior, one piece from club hockey people. And it's amazing when you get some of the minds together and what can come out of it.
I mean, Ben, is that kind of one of the differentiating factors, for using Catapult as a technology provider, is just, not only the service breadth that they can provide you, but just the ecosystem overall?
No, absolutely. When guys ask me about it, I say the most important thing for me, having been through this for a while, and I've used a few other programs, is the service, is the support. As Pat was alluding to, it could be a Friday night and the puck drop is in 5 minutes and I don't have a video feed. I can call the support line and I know somebody's going to get to me. And somebody qualified that has been through what I'm going through is able to take the emotion that I might be dealing with out of it and able to help me with my issue, whether it be calling help call the IT people from the rink that we're at and get into their network and see what's going on and see if it's an issue with my own setup, which, most of the time it probably is. But it's unbelievable. I tell everyone that asks me about Catapult that is the number one reason to go with them over anybody else. And it's saved me so much time, and I can't even put a number on the amount of hours that it has saved me, just being able to call the number and talk to somebody that knows exactly what they're looking for.
I mean, Matt, how much has it even helped, within your own department in terms of kind of bringing strength and conditioning closer to video closer to the coaching staff? How much has it just kind of helped you guys internally?
Well, I got to credit the last two strength coaches, actually, especially Devin McConnell, Kevin Cronin. Devin really talked about a non-siloed approach. It can't just be strength and conditioning. It can't just be video on their own island. It can't just be athletic training. It can. I just don't think it's that efficient and that successful. And I think when you have a common technology like this, it brings everybody under the same silo of the roof per se. where we know that the conversations we're having are centered around the player development, and this is just the technology that we're using to quantify that. And I think just having that streamlined communication, it's not, and I understand. There's some coaches that, hey, listen, I just want to see intensity. Like, I don't need to see, force per. And hey, that's fine. That's okay. I'm not, as long as you meet me halfway and we come to an agreement on what this metric means and how valuable it is for what we're doing, then hey, that's fine. But I think, like I said, the more collaborative we are as a staff, I think it only helps the players and ultimately helps our team win games.
Matt, I'll follow that up just a little bit. We all know technology is ever evolving. There are always new features, always things that are coming to the platform. I'm curious if you had access to say the video alongside the performance data, how would something like that help you guys? And what are you guys kind of looking forward to working with Catapult in future iterations?
So for me, I think it's a two-pronged approach, and I'm a very hype up guy. I really want to make sure I believe in confidence over everything, especially in hockey. To a point. Obviously not cocky, but I want our guys feeling really good. And I think to have some of that metrics, whether it be a velocity or an acceleration rate or power, and to show that athlete relaying over video, hey, you were neck and neck with this athlete on the blue line and you just turned it on and just blew by him. Because when you have that data, it's just a number, right? Like, you're trying to provide a little bit of context to that number. And I think having just showing an athlete, for example, like, hey, you hit a speed of 20 miles an hour, they're kind of looking at you like, okay, that's pretty cool. But if you show them how you use that 20 miles an hour in a game, you outworked an opponent, you outcompeted an opponent. Now that buy-in just goes through the roof. I mean, now the players are seeing, hey, whatever we're doing in the gym or whatever Murray's, explaining to the staff in terms of what we're trying to do for a practice, it's working. And, they're seeing that, they're visually seeing those numbers on the ice where it really matters, right? And I think just having that would just be, because obviously kids go through slumps throughout the year. They're feeling good. They're not feeling good. Kids are goalless. Maybe a kid that's not scoring goals in the first 4 games. And it's like, hey, listen, you're not scoring goals, but let's try to highlight some of the physical things you're doing, whether it be you're the first to the puck on a penalty kill, or, you're not taking any penalties because you're out competing guys to pucks, right? And then you kind of start to really frame the conversation around what they do well and how that we can use all this information to help you, increase your play.
Pat, I'm not asking you to spill any company secrets or anything like that, but how does Catapult kind of view where you guys are going and how the platform's going to continue to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's breaking any news that when Catapult went out and acquired Exos, kind of the idea was that we were going to be able to pair wearable data with video. So we are in the process of doing that right now. We actually have something for soccer called Match Tracker. We're working on something called Game Tracker, where it's really kind of going to be your hub for all your data paired alongside with video. And one of the things that I really see is, and what I think our company does a good job of, is driving conversation with different departments. So let's say that coach comes up to Matt and he says, hey, why is this guy's workload so low in game? And it could be, well, he wasn't playing a lot, so that's one reason. Or maybe he's just in position all the time and he doesn't have to work as hard as somebody else. Conversely, why is this player's load so high? Why is their max velocity always the highest? Well, maybe they're out of position and they have to work back to get into position. So I think that's kind of where, some of the tactics and understanding can help drive some of the context of those metrics and what you're seeing. That's how I see it being used anyway. And
Ben, you mentioned a little bit earlier in terms of the support that Catapult has provided in attending some of those conferences. I'm just curious how Catapult as a partner with you guys is helping you advance your own career.
So like I said, I started as a volunteer student, and I was lucky enough to be able to get a little more experience while I was an undergrad. And then I stayed at UMass Lowell, was able to get my master's. And then I actually was able to get a job from the users conference about 5 years ago now. And the way life works, it comes full circle. And I was able to get the, one step up job back at UMass Lowell, 4 years after I left the first time. So both times that I've taken a new position has been a direct result of Catapult and the users conference. So, but other than that, the network that I've built through just meeting everyone at the conference and talking about the same struggles that we all face, day in and day out, being in the trenches, and it builds a nice camaraderie with the community. And I have a lot of friends that I've met just from the conference alone.
And Matt, I would assume the same is kind of the exact same on the strength and conditioning side, just especially because being able to know the system itself as you come into a new job, or perhaps they've been using Catapult for a long time, like UMass Lowell has, it makes that transition easier when you do get those promotions.
Yeah, I think it's just seamless. And I think in Maine, I really cut my teeth in terms of the weeds of the data and understanding the system. And I think I'm at a pretty good point around. I'm no expert, but I think I can, kind of work my way around it. And I think from a coaching standpoint, if you're hiring a person that has experience in a system that you're using, there's just very little downtime. I came in, I hit the ground running. There was really no transition for me. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And then I just worked with our coaching staff to kind of fine tune it based off what they wanted to see. And that was less than 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And once they figured it out, and we just hit the ground running. And I think too, like where it started, and initially, we asked for Catapult in Maine, and, Maine's a very low budget, school. They just don't have the funds for stuff like that. And we were fortunate enough to have a donor donate it to us up there, which was, obviously very grateful for it, but it was a little intimidating because I think it was it was a very powerful tool at a school where I didn't really know if we were able to handle that information, right? So as much as I really wanted it, because I knew what it was going to benefit the athletes, and I knew it was going to help them transition to that next level, whether it be the AHL, wherever they're playing in pro. I also knew that I had to clear a lot of hurdles with our coaching staff first, or administration first. And, once I felt like I cleared that, it was just very easy to hop to Lowell, and it was just very easy to have those conversations with the coaches because of all the experience I had up in Maine.
And Patrick, I would imagine just seeing the giant cross section that Catapult has, across the entire hockey industry. This is really a platform that allows others to kind of move beyond from college and into the pros, and vice versa.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I get texts from some of my colleagues that are asking if I know anybody that'd be looking for a job that would be a step up. And honestly, like, it's a really good conversation starter for guys that are in the American League or in the NCAA, and they want to move up to the NHL or NCAA to AHL, whatever it may be. Being able to just say like, hey, so what metrics are you paying attention to with Catapult? And just starting a conversation that way. So happy to be an ecosystem for helping people network and move up the chain. So
I can't wait to see how it evolves, how it helps your guys' careers evolve as well. But, October 1st is going to be right around the corner. We're going to have games being played. I can't wait for a very unique road to the Frozen Four this year. But hopefully UMass Lowell will be in the mix for that. Guys, we really appreciate the time. And thank you so much for a terrific conversation.
Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah, thank you.